Greetings, Missouri Mid-South Conference. I bring you greetings today from Kansas City, from the place that I've been staying for the past few days as I worshiped at Ebenezer Legacy and celebrating their 125th anniversary, and then by attending the Western Association Committee on Ministry, and then today on Tuesday, as I'm recording this video, meeting with different ministers and churches in the Kansas City area in the Western Association. This is not a hotel. This is actually the hospitality of one of our wonderful members of the Western Association of Country Club United Church of Christ, Melissa Larson. Her guest house or mother-in-law suite, her garage, has been a wonderful place where I can spend the night. She and her husband Tim and their daughter Nora, who is in confirmation in Country Club UCC, have been very, very hospitable to me as I have been trying to save the budget and save our pennies in the Missouri Mid-South Conference. So rather than me staying at a hotel, I have received their hospitality and have stayed here. I shared this and where I am to acknowledge the email that you received last week. And I want to first say that I apologize for sending that as I was on vacation. Unfortunately, it was time with my husband and family that I couldn't get away and really needed to get away for rest and renewal for me and my family, but also because the email that came out last week was one about our financial health as the Missouri Mid-South Conference, and I really wish that I could have shared that in person or via video, but that's the reason why I'm sharing today. As I have been your conference minister since December of 2015, I have been aware that our finances have been in challenging places. In some ways, this is not a surprise because we are all swimming in the water of declining finances. In many conferences, in many churches, of your churches, in the United Church of Christ, in many denominations, this continued theme of decline in finances is one that we all share. And how are we good stewards with the generosity that so many of you offer in real and significant ways? And so in our conference ministry time together, I've been aware of this reality. But I've also been aware of the deeper reality of what's happening within the conference itself. This is not to be real negative and say the sky is falling and we're going to have to shut the doors and all that, but really it's to be honest. If we are to be the church, if we are to be the Missouri Mid-South Conference, then you deserve, out of respect and love and trust, the reality and our financial health of where we are. And I am responsible for offering that to you as well as the Conference Council. Last Saturday on February 18th, the Conference Council met and we discussed two significant components of our financial health. First is the reality of 2016, that we actually had a deficit in our expenses and our income. Our income from two primary sources: our church's wider mission, which we lovingly refer to as OCWM, that financial generosity that so many of our UCC churches in the conference give to the conference, and then we give 20% of our church's wider mission to the national church setting. OCWM for 2016 was actually less than in 2015. For some of us, this was a surprise because we expect a decline when there is a transition time, but when there is a conference minister and a settled conference minister, it was a little bit surprising. I will name that in the midst of everything happening last year, one of our challenges, and mine as conference minister, was not reaching out to the local churches and firming up our church's wider mission. We sent a letter at the last quarter of 2016, but we weren't able to share what was really going on. And so I will, as conference minister, I will take responsibility for that. And I will pledge that we will do a much better job in 2017 and moving forward. The other source of income that we did not see as much as we were expecting was the Friends of the Conference, which is the fund that we invite both churches and members and friends to contribute to, so that we can continue to do the wonderful ministries in the Missouri Mid-South Conference. What we had budgeted was significantly, what we received was significantly less than what we had budgeted. And that was difficult. As David Rauch, our treasurer, shared with the conference council, one of the graces of 2016 was that we really stayed within our budget and our line items, that we didn't exceed it. In fact, we were under our budgeted expenses. And for that, we have a significantly less amount of a deficit than we might have had. Still, we had a deficit. And still, we, as the Missouri Mid-South Conference, need to be caretakers of what that financial reality and what that means for our financial and spiritual health as the Missouri Mid-South Conference. We must be good stewards of what we've been given, and we must be generous in what we have been given as well. Which leads me to 2017. The Conference Council, in looking at the budget deficit of 2016, also understood that to be good stewards and good leaders of this conference, that we needed to go back and revise the budget that had been approved, that you had approved at the conference annual gathering in 2016. And that is what the Conference Council did, and really skimmed and worked on looking at areas where we could decrease and streamline our budget. We did this in a few areas. Number one, we identified what we described as big ticket items, which is budget line items that are significant in cost, $10,000, $20,000, that if we could figure out a way to transition it over in some way and figure out another option of how to pay for that, that would help us in streamlining our 2017 budget. And so we did this with a few items of some of our covenanted ministry budgeted line items, and also our general synod. And what we did is that we moved it over to what we refer to as our designated accounts. And those designated accounts are accounts that are set aside, that are literally designated for specific purposes, either missions or youth or different funds that in the past, sometimes we have dipped into those funds, but we've shown them in the general operating fund. And a part of what we wanted to do this year was to compare apples to apples, and really what is in the general operating fund is really in the general operating fund, and what expenses we pay for from the designated accounts, that we really keep that separate. And so, for example, the General Synod delegates, of which we have 21, that amount has been transitioned over, number one, to the designated accounts, and a portion of that money is going to come from the amount of money that we are able to keep from one of our 5 UCC offerings called Strengthen the Church. That offering, Strengthen the Church, is collected at Pentecost every year. And that amount, this is the last year we're able to do this, but that offering is the only offering where 50% goes to the National United Church of Christ for renewal of churches and church starts and things that focus specifically on strengthening our local churches. But then 50% stays in the Missouri Mid-South Conference, and we have used that pool of money for many different grants and ministries and things related to our local churches. We believe that General Synod is indeed a significant way that we are strengthening the local churches through the resources that we provide, through the networking that our delegates, our members who are visitors, our clergy who are visitors, are offered whenever we connect with the broader church of the United Church of Christ. And so the amount for General Synod will come from Strengthen the Church, but it will also come from the Strengthen the Church offering this year that will be collected at Pentecost, and the 50% that will be coming to the conference will specifically go to pay for our General Synod operating costs for 2017. I want to say that this is a temporary 2017 solution. It is not a long-term solution. I am not an advocate of continually dipping into the well of our designated accounts in order to keep our general operating fund up and running. And so we will be looking, the Administration and Finance Standing Committee, the OCWM, Covenant Ministry Team, and the Conference Council will continue to look at what ways we can streamline our budget so that we are not living by the means of our designated accounts. Another area that you probably read about in the email that I want to talk about personally is in the area of the elimination of one of our conference staff positions. This became very clear in terms of our financial situation, not only just from 2016, but the reality that just as a lot of our local churches are giving as generously as they can, and even if our churches give a little bit more, we as the Missouri Mid-South Conference must figure out how to streamline. And as we downsize our staff, we have to downsize our expectations and our needs. And so it is with great sadness and with great discernment from my position as conference minister, as the head of personnel, as well as with the personnel committee and the executive committee and the conference council. I share with you that we have eliminated the position of administrative assistant / receptionist, which is the position that Kris Scott holds. I sat with this for a long time and did not do this quickly or lightly because I have deep respect and appreciation for the gift and the ministry that Kris has offered. She has been the first voice and the first face that many of you have seen and heard of the Missouri Mid-South Conference. She has embodied the very extravagant hospitality that we proclaim and celebrate throughout the United Church of Christ. And I want to personally say that I give thanks for Kris's service and her work, but most importantly for her ministry to the Missouri Mid-South Conference. Unfortunately, we cannot afford to continue her position at this time. And so, Kris and I have talked, and the conference council has shared in wanting to be fair. And so Kris's last day at the Missouri Mid-South Conference as the administrative assistant / receptionist will be this Friday, March 3rd. We will continue to pay her through the end of March 31st, as severance pay and out of respect for her service to the Missouri Mid-South Conference. I hope that you will have the opportunity to email or call Kris and to offer a word and an expression of gratitude, appreciation, and love. For we indeed will miss Kris for so many reasons, especially for her work and for her hospitality. As I have shared about the position and Kris's position being eliminated, I also want to share the reality of what that means. One might think that all that Kris does will then immediately be transitioned back to Renee. And I want to name that that's not a reality. I, as the head of staff and head of personnel, I also want to make sure that what we expect of all of our staff, our office staff, our ministry staff, our camp staff, is realistic and it's spiritually healthy, physically healthy, emotionally healthy. And to expect that Renee will absorb everything that Kris was doing at the same salary is unrealistic. And so here's where you and I will be working hand in hand, heart in heart, mind in mind together. Because a part of what I will be doing with the office staff, with the personnel committee, with the conference council, and with all of our different covenant and ministry teams is to say, we are at this critical moment, both in terms of the responsibilities and expectations of the conference office staff, but also the responsibilities and expectations of the conference ministry staff, that being Dale and myself. We no longer can do all of the work in the ministry that has been done in the past by an office staff of 3, 4, or 5 people, or a conference ministry staff of a conference minister and 3 or 4 associate conference ministers. Those days are gone. We do not have the financial means to do that. And so I want to be the first to say that we cannot, the conference staff cannot absorb all that we used to do with all of those different staff members that we no longer have. We cannot do that any longer. And so a part of the question that I will be raising with the conference staff, with the conference council, with the personnel committee, and with the different covenant and ministry teams is, what are the true non-negotiable needs of the Missouri Mid-South Conference that must be done and can only be done by the conference office staff and the conference ministry staff? What are those needs? In conference ministry staff, I have identified that as the search and call from the profile perspective and the clergy perspective because of the expectations of the national UCC, but also because of the confidentiality. And committee on ministry, again because of the confidentiality and because of the expectations from the national UCC. There are some other non-negotiable needs that Dale and I must do, but everything else that we used to do in the conference ministry staff, those things will need to be either delegated or affirmed in our conference leadership. A perfect example of that is our search and call stewards. Because Dale and I cannot give the attention and the time that we used to be able to with a larger staff, we have 8 wonderful, significant stewards who are helping us in that way. I imagine and anticipate that this will happen over and over with a lot of different things, including the things that we used to do just with the office staff, that you would call and say, I need this letter sent out, can you do it? And Renee and Kris and Lorraine would say, we can do it, awesome. Now, we've got to figure out what are those non-negotiable needs that they have to do. The database, the data hub, the link to the committees on ministry, the link to the search and call. Those aspects are the aspects that we must make sure that our conference office staff are able to do, and then everything else, including my schedule, will be absorbed by all of us. I will now be handling my own worship schedule, and I ask for grace and patience with me as I may not be able to always answer emails in an immediate basis. These are new days, and with budget and financial restraints, there's the temptation to close up and become fearful. Oh my goodness, how are we going to survive? And I say no. This is the very moment, like the Israelites and like the disciples and like the early church, in the moments where there was challenge and where there was difficulty and barriers that were ahead of them, they opened themselves to the divine in wisdom, in strength, in courage, in generosity, in stewardship, in love. This is our time, and we are leading our change. We are leading it by living into it with fullness, with hope, with compassion. And so, my brothers and sisters, as we do so in creative and significant ways, know that I lead and I serve and I walk with you, that we are not alone, but that God is with us in these days of love, this day and forevermore.